Hello, welcome to the guests that are coming in. Just getting started. Thanks for being the first people to join in and say hi. Welcome tonight. Trying to make this a regular thing. It's right on time tonight. Hello, how are you? Good to see you. Thanks for swinging in. Welcome, Toxic Avenger. It's a crazy night for me. I have officially, quote unquote, retired, and so now I get to do whatever the hell I want. It's kind of a good feeling. I guess I'm in a really good mood because of that. So again, for those who are unfamiliar with the format of this show, or the live, whatever you want to call it, it starts in about 9 minutes. I just get in here 10 minutes early and kind of get warmed up and say hi to a few people. And then I don't have an official topic for tonight. It's more of a Q&A, updates. Of course, our channel primarily focuses a lot on Luigi Mangione, so we'll talk about the latest developments in the Luigi Mangione situation with his new counsel. And we are also delving into Bryan Kohberger case, again, getting into that. The P. Diddy case we cover on our site. So I got lots of stuff. Thoughts still on the airline incident between the Black Hawk and the commercial airliner in Washington, D.C., which we haven't officially dived into yet, but may do that here shortly. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff on our mind. I have been doing a lot of the Bryan Kohberger, also working on a book project that we're trying to finish that we started 12 years ago, actually. And we're starting to get that book project going again to try to finish that up soon. So we got a lot of stuff in the works. Yeah, January was a long month where there's no information in the Luigi case, right? It feels like it's taking forever for anything new. And unfortunately, it might be one of those situations that when you finally get some news, it'll be, I waited a month for that, or 2 months for that. It feels like, because there might not be much, or there may be a ton. Oh God! I get on the lives and I start yawning freaking every time. It's crazy. A jacked up January. For some reason that comment was blocked. But I read it, so I won't necessarily go do that. But yeah, January. It's like a big time for a seasonal oh gosh, you know what I'm trying to say. The disorder where people have in the winter where they get affective disorder, where they start to get depressed in January. It's a big month for that. So, yeah, I've got a friend that actually kind of suffers from that pretty bad. Every winter he goes through a major depression, it seems like. And of course, from an outsider perspective who doesn't deal with depression as much, you're kind of like, man, you got to snap out of it. But it's hard to get somebody out of that depression. And it hits like clockwork. I've got a couple friends that have clockwork depression that hits around certain times a year. So I'm very used to that, and it's a bad thing. So thank you so much for a follow there, by the way, and I appreciate that. And if anybody can give us some likes to get us started, that'd be great if you feel so inclined. Of course, I don't want to beg, but getting some likes would help us get some more exposure when it comes time for 6 o'clock. I got some kind of hair on my tongue. That's amazing. Anyways, and so, yeah, we just want to get rolling here and get off to a good start. I don't have any guests scheduled tonight. I did tentatively ask somebody if they wanted to come in and talk a little bit. I also have had a couple of people who have been on the lives before who frequently drop in. So we'll see if they drop in tonight unannounced. I am working on trying to get some people onto the lives with me, but I have not had such good luck getting people. And wow, my teeth look super yellow in this lighting. That's awesome. Wow. All right. So yes, did I just use my freaking outside voice with that? Anyways, so tell me what's on your mind if you have anything on your mind. In 5 minutes, I'll do more of an official kind of start for the live. What did I do? Yeah, I'm trying to save some of the announcements I'll make at the top of the hour, so I will hold off on that. So yeah, any comments? Thanks for a new. I guess we got another follow in there that, or maybe that's another comment from the same person who followed me. But thank you so much for the follow. I really appreciate that. I hope you're watching our content on Devil's Advocates. So far, like I said, Luigi has been the primary thing that we're covering, but we do cover other things as well, and we will be covering topics of interest for us, and hope that you will be interested in them as well, but not always. Like some people are strictly Luigi and Luigi only, and that's all they want to talk about. The legal fund is getting a ton of donations continuously since KFA announced that he'll be using it. That's an interesting thing. I mean, my thoughts on the fund are a little mixed, because at last I saw, like, when there was a first fund that was put out that got about $200,000, and it seems like it's still at $200,000, $250,000. Now, granted, if you say it's been getting more funds, then maybe they've raised beyond that kind of thing. But I'm kind of the lines of some people who are saying that's a drop in the bucket compared to what this court case is going to cost. So. And I believe that Luigi is being funded somewhere else. So the real question becomes, not to say that I wouldn't encourage people to help out in the way that they can, but I'm not sure that Luigi needs the money per se. I think he's got plenty of money for the defense. So then the question becomes, where does the money go that gets donated to the Luigi Defense Fund? Like, I'm not 100% sure. So the prison consultant, yeah. So I'm not 100% sure, like I said, how much it helps, but I know that people really, really want to support his defense, and for that, I can't blame anybody for doing that. Like I said, I just don't know. I'm always nervous about places that collect money on somebody else's behalf, because you got to trust that they're actually going to use it the way that they said, and that somebody doesn't scam off with a bunch of the money, and you feel good about your donation, but may never get to them. So I've got a lot of reservations about it. But again, I don't begrudge anybody who wants to help out. And if people are nickel and diming things that they can afford, and they're not like breaking the bank to help with this legal fund, then more power to you. Thanks for the likes, by the way. Thanks. It helps a lot. Getting the likes going before the 6 o'clock start would help us get off to a rolling start. So I really appreciate that very much. Any other questions, comments about the legal fund or anything like that? At the top of the hour, I'll probably I will review the addition of Avi Moskowitz to the legal team, and what that means and what it doesn't mean, and things like that. So, yeah, and it does. I mean, the donations to the fund would make a statement, right, to certain people that he's got support. Yeah, and if Karen's made the statement, I haven't seen Karen's official statement, but I did read that Karen Ignifilo had publicly announced that they were allowing or using funds, or going to use funds from that. So good on them. And like I said, it does show support. If probably more than anything, that's probably, hello, by the way, it's probably more than anything a good thing just for the show of support. There was something about Newsweek I saw go by and I missed it. It was on Newsweek yesterday. Okay, yeah, excellent. Yeah. Did she make a public from the camera announcement about it, or was just reported in a like from an official news source like Newsweek? I'm curious. I didn't see it myself. So as we're approaching 6 o'clock, we're getting more of our regular followers. It was just reported. Okay, excellent. Yeah, as long as it was reported from a genuine source, and that we feel confident it's coming from his legal team's perspective and Karen's office, then great. That's fantastic. Just make sure you always be careful that you're not getting scammed by somebody who claims to be in their defense team and really isn't associated. So, but if Newsweek covered it, you would think it would be legit, and they wouldn't put their name on something that was somebody scamming money. So that's perfect. And I don't want to discredit the fund, so I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying always be careful. Good. Perfect. All right. So it's 6 o'clock. Again, I don't have anything 100% like show-wise lined out, and I tend to do these for about an hour unless something breaks and we have a longer talk. But Generally, I like to go for about an hour. So let me tell you some things that happened in the Devil's Advocate's world this week, and things that we're working on and things that happened. So I made a video, by the way, in which the way that I worded it about Luigi Mangione was misleading by accident on my part. I got educated by a user in the comments, and since have done some education on my own now to make sure that they were right. And I want to clarify that because I did make a correction video about the video that's out there. And here's the thing that's funny about that. I contemplated pulling the video that was misleading. However, I have watched NBC, CBS, multiple news sources basically say the same thing that I did, basically, which is also misleading. So mainstream media also kind of stated it in a way that's misleading. I'm going to explain all of this in a second, and why I didn't pull the video, just in case you were curious. So what I was commenting on was the fact that just recently it was reported, I saw it on ABC News first, that Luigi Mangione had had a new attorney appointed to his team, and that was Avi Moskowitz, who is a specialist in death penalty cases, right? And so when I saw the breaking news, I was a little early on the jump on the gun because somebody specifically asked, and when I heard about it in a Discord forum. And in Discord, somebody had asked, what does this mean that he picked up a death penalty specialist for his defense? What does that mean? And I made a video that said three basic things, I think it was three basic things that were a little misleading because I didn't understand exactly the process. One, I pointed out that Karen, I think it was Karen Parker is the judge. Was it Karen? Anyways, that she had approved, is the word I used, approved adding Avi Moskowitz to Luigi's team. The misleading part is the word approved. It really should have been appointed. And I'm explaining for those who don't understand what the difference is. So it wasn't just that she approved, because approved leads somebody to believe that Karen Agnifilo requested from the judge to add Avi Moskowitz as an extra attorney, and that the judge in the case approved that addition. That's not how it actually worked and how the process worked, as I understand it now. What did happen was, any time in New York, and apparently it's in most states, I've been told, I only checked into New York, but in any time that the death penalty is on the table, in New York in particular, but other states I think do it as well, there is a requirement that the court appoint a specialist as a lending counsel, I think is the word, a lending counsel. Somebody who basically has experience in death penalty cases to assist the legal team with that particular issue. And it's a requirement by law. So in other words, the judge in the case had to appoint a lending counsel specializing in death penalty because death penalty was on the table. So therefore, it wasn't a request by Luigi's team to add Avi Moskowitz. It was an appointment by the judge. Whether they wanted it or not, that appointment was going to happen, right? So the misleading part, maybe on my part, was to say, well, she approved it, so that's a good thing. It wasn't approved; it was an appointment. The gist of the message, the gist of my video, that the reason why I didn't pull it was, Luigi has added another attorney to another highfalutin attorney to his team. That is true. Avi Moskowitz is well known in defense of death penalty. That's why he was appointed, and so therefore he has been added to the legal team, and so therefore those things were true. I also said that it shows that Luigi intends to fight this issue, that he's going to fight in court, because they have another lawyer to specialize in this. And I think that also is still true. If they were just going to change their plea to guilty or something to that effect, they wouldn't be worried about this situation. They wouldn't need this thing. So the indicators are that we are going to have a trial, and we're going to have a defense against this, and to fight the death penalty situation. So I didn't pull the video because of those reasons. Thankfully, somebody here in the comments has agreed with me that it was an honest mistake. I didn't do that video to pander to an audience and make people think something that wasn't true. However, I felt bad enough when somebody said, "You got the basics all wrong." That person was appointed to the team because it's required by law. And I went, really? So I looked into it, and indeed, it is a law, and it was an appointment by the judge. So that person was correct. I made a video replying to that person. And by the way, all of this stuff I wouldn't say in a short form TikTok, right? This is why we have lives, so I can talk to you about it and explain to you what my actions were. So I thanked that person for correcting my knowledge of the legal system. I then made a video in response that basically said, hey, thanks for this, and you're right, this is what happened, it was an appointment, whatever. And it's funny because this was weighing on my mind. I'm like, well, what do I do? Do I pull the video that I put out there? And it was kind of doing well. It was got thousands of views in a short amount of time. And my friend, who's my partner, business partner in this, was like, you need to pull that video if you said something inaccurate. And I'm like, oh my God, like TikTok's full of people saying things inaccurate, and it was an honest mistake. And then literally while I'm getting text messages on my phone, breaking news from CBS News, and they worded it almost exactly like me. Luigi Mangione has added a high-powered attorney to his team. And I'm like, that's exactly what I just said. Like, I didn't say hardly anything different than anybody else was saying. So, yeah, thank you very much for understanding. It was an honest mistake. I just wanted to get that off my chest because I felt like my friend thought, well, maybe you need to really pull that video and not let that bad information circulate. But I don't think it's all that bad. Anyways, what else? I also did a long form, so I'm just telling you some of the highlights of what's happened at Devil's Advocates, and then I will ask more questions. I'm also seeing if any of my regulars want to come on and take the mic. So devilsadvocates.info is our main website. We've added a new page that's been up for a few days now to our website at devilsadvocates.info. That right at the top, you'll see there's a thing that says What's New. Every single day, I'm going to be updating the What's New page on Devil's Advocates. And what that does, What's New, if you would care to go there and bookmark it or something like that, is it'll tell you what projects we're working on every single day. It'll tell you things like, today I spent X number of hours listening to a Bryan Kohberger podcast, such and such, such. We've updated the timeline with this information. We also posted a Luigi Mangione video about the appointment of Avi Moskowitz. We've also done a long form video talking about our timeline, part 3, and uploaded it to YouTube with links and stuff to all these things. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that I don't talk about on a TikTok video, obviously, maybe in the live. But if you are curious to know what projects we're working on a daily basis and make sure that you don't miss anything, because some people are invested in our product or our channel, whatever, our personality, and are making friends with us. And if you're one of those people and you really want to see our content and our take on things, that's the best way to do it. So devilsadvocates.info and the What's New page. So if you want to check that out, that'd be great. Like I said, tonight I did post a long form video on YouTube. I'm still learning how to make things more professional looking, as maybe even tonight's lighting is a little better. On the YouTube video, I've made a different layout. Part 1 and part 2 had this fancy bumper that I tried to make, but it was in my infancy stage of doing editing, and it was pretty bad. I'm not the graphics guy. My partner is the graphics guy, but he works full time. I do not. So I tried to put it together myself. It was pretty embarrassing. He's working on getting me a more professional bumper. So we're going to continue to clean up our image so things look better and more professional, because the research we do, I feel, is on a very good level. We just need to have that presentation that goes with it, in my opinion. So anyways, long form video went up, part 3. It was about 46 minutes about, and we covered in specifically the people's, Action Institute. The People's Action Institute, which is a protest group that was protesting United Healthcare prior to the murders, where they were carrying around a casket outside of the United Healthcare. I covered that in the long form video today and why that matters. What the possibility that Luigi Mangione could have actually been at or involved with the July protest at United Healthcare. Now, I have no reason to believe that Luigi was there, other than that's the time that Luigi Mangione went missing, and his family said that he'd been missing since July. The protest was in July. I have stated on my channel many times that I believe that there's evidence of conspirators that are involved in the shooting of Brian Thompson, that it wasn't just one person, and that could kind of thing, like the protests by the People's Action Institute in April and July prior to the shooting, could be the type of group that would put together a group of people who conspire to pull off something like that. Could Luigi have been one of them? Yes. Could Luigi have been fingered? Could Luigi have talked about it and then the group set him up? All these things are possibilities, in my opinion. So we talked about that on the live, not on the live, the long form video on YouTube, as well as started to get into the timeline, the official timeline of when Luigi supposedly showed up in New York on November 29th, I believe it was, and it checked into the hostel. We went over some video, some images, some still images of the backpack and the images that were caught when his face mask was off. Talked about that on the long form. By now, everybody's heard all that stuff a million times, so you probably are getting a little bored of it. However, if you haven't heard it or if you want a refresher, I recommend you go to YouTube and look for Devil's Advocate's channel and see our videos there, including the one I just posted today. In addition, Bryan Kohberger was the big thing that I was studying today. I'm trying to get, so Bryan Kohberger is near and close to home. If you're not familiar with who Bryan Kohberger is or what, and I will try to be relatively brief because I realize a lot of people are here only for Luigi content. So I'm just going to cover Bryan Kohberger, why I give a shit about it, why I think you should as well, why it might be interesting for you to follow. But I realize that most people's attention is on Luigi. But Bryan Kohberger was the alleged suspect in the Idaho 4 slayings that happened a couple years ago. His trial is now coming up, I believe, in August, so it seems like it's quite a ways out. But things are happening in that trial. Right now, the defense is trying to get the entire case basically thrown out. It's their last-ditch effort to try to throw the entire case out. But the reason why it's near and dear to me is I went to WSU, Washington State University. That's where Bryan Kohberger was going as a PhD candidate in criminal justice. Neighboring WSU is the little small town of Idaho, Moscow, Idaho, with the Idaho, the campus is, well, it's the Vandals, but I can't remember if it's Idaho University or the exact acronym. But anyways, it's right next door, touching Pullman, Washington. And so I was there as well. And so it's near and dear to home. In fact, I'm about 2.5 hours from Pullman and Moscow right now. And my buddy and I are kind of planning on going up there a little bit. University of Idaho, yeah. So the Vandals, I believe that's correct. University of Idaho. So that's why it's a little bit near and dear to us, because I went to school there, so I was familiar with the campus. I'm familiar with, when I was going to school there, I visited Moscow on a regular basis too. This is a common thing that students do. If I remember right, when I was there was a drinking age difference between Washington State and Idaho, and it was like 19 in Idaho and it was 21 in Washington. So we'd sneak over to the Idaho border to do our drinking because it was a place where you could do that. And because of that, it became the party area, right? Because younger kids, more people could hang out. That's the way I remember, but that's been decades ago. I don't know what the situation was a couple years ago. But anyways, so it was common for students to intermingle. So anyways, on the Bryan Kohberger situation, today I was listening to the podcast. I made an interesting connection between Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. His first murder was in 1974. What was interesting was, and again, I know that this is one of those things I said I was going to try to be brief on Kohberger, but I saw character analysis came into the channel here, at least for a moment, and she covers Kohberger as well. In fact, I had asked if she wanted to have some thoughts about it or talk about it. So maybe I'll hold off on that just a hair, just in case she wants to jump on here and talk about Kohberger a little bit and what I found out and the connections that I make. Now, my brain thinks a little different than other people. So I tend to make connections where people don't necessarily go. So let me finish up. And character, if you want to jump on here, I'll recap what I found, and then maybe or I'll bring you up and we'll talk about it if you care to do that. So that's that. The Kohberger thing. There's several different things about that. Luigi Mangione, like I said, what we're waiting for, of course, now is The 17th date, I think, is still on the table, which I guess is a holiday, so I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen with there. But we're waiting for the official decision on the arraignment or on basically moving with the preliminary hearing, which a grand jury indictment. Sorry, not an arraignment. We already had the arraignment. We're looking for the indictment, and so we're looking for that. So, hey, character, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
So we're talking Papa Rogers.
Yeah, I was gonna cover that. It's kind of funny because I know a lot of people who watch our channel right now only watch because of Luigi Mangione. But since you're here, and I know that you've been covering, Kohberger too, and I have to confess, like I'm just getting back into Kohberger, and so I'm not going to be up on a case like you, and I also have a confession that I haven't watched all your videos on Kohberger. In fact, I was trying to find out if you put them in a playlist so I could catch all anything you said about Kohberger and kind of refresh my memory on what you've seen as well. But for our audience, I guess I'll do a little brief introduction, and then I'll let you. And thanks for muting, by the way. You had a lot of side noise for a moment. So let me do a quick recap, and then if you want to jump on and kind of give me your thoughts or corrections on what I say, that'd be great. So for the audience here, we're going to talk for a little bit about Bryan Kohberger and the Idaho 4 murders, and we're gonna talk about that. But again, Luigi Mangione is on the table. I probably will circle back to that. So if you still care about talking about that, don't leave. We'll talk about that when we get done talking a little Kohberger. So what was interesting to me was there was allegations in the community that, and it's funny because in the early stages of the Kohberger case, I jumped on forums and I joined a Facebook group or two about the Idaho 4 murders and Bryan Kohberger justice and all these things. I was on multiple Facebook groups and I was participating with the audience there in the community and doing those things. So little did I know that when I dropped out of it, and mostly I dropped out of it because basically kind of a ridiculous gag order came over the whole case and nobody was allowed to talk about anything and no new information was coming out. And I was like, we're just spinning our wheels talking about shit that nothing new is happening. So, and there's a gag order. So I guess we're all just going to have to wait for the trial. And I kind of burned out and just decided to let it go. Well, little did I know that there was an individual who was communicating in one of those Facebook groups. I'm not sure which one, and I don't know if it was one of the ones that I was involved in or not, but that went by the name of Papa Roger. And Papa Roger had a profile picture that some believed looked similar to Bryan Kohberger. Now, apparently it was an actual painting by somebody of a generic soldier, but it seemed to have some similarities to Kohberger. And the main thing that was interesting was the Papa Rogers was posting things that indicated they knew things about the crime and the murders that hadn't been made public yet. Most specifically was his comment, something to the effect of they're going to find that it was a fixed bladed weapon and that there will be a sheath left at the scene, which was not made publicly announced to the public, and then came out later that it was. And then people started to ask, how the hell did Papa Roger know that there was a knife sheath left at the scene? And I don't believe they'd even really specified the fixed blade knife yet, but more specifically, the sheath issue. Now,
can I interject there for a second?
Yeah.
So the reason why they would have known that the sheath was left behind was because right away they said that they were looking for a K-bar knife. So that was a natural assumption that the sheath was left behind because they knew the kind of knife that was used.
All right, fair.
So that's how they would have known.
All right, fair. Let me finish my. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So again, some people in the community had speculated that he knew things. There was another time that came up, another example where there was crime scene photos shown, and somebody had pointed out whose bedroom was a certain bedroom. And Papa Roger came on and corrected it and said, that's not so-and-so's bedroom, it's so-and-so's bedroom, and corrected information, again, showing what appeared to be an intimate knowledge of the case and where things were. Now, whether or not they were just a really good researcher and pulled that kind of stuff up, or whether they knew something or not, it led some to believe that either the person posting as Papa Roger was an actual law enforcement official that was giving insider information and posting as just a generic public, trying to feed information and ask and see who knows what, or Bryan Kohberger himself. the main speculation of why it was Bryan Kohberger himself apparently comes out that the fact that Papa Roger stopped posting just before Bryan Kohberger was arrested. Later, another profile or two came out with a different Papa Roger, or a slightly different spelling, Papa Rogers or 1P and so whatever, kind of copycat accounts, to which some said, well, it can't be Bryan Kohberger because he's still posting. There's others who say, no, the real Papa Roger stopped posting before Bryan Kohberger was arrested. Once he's arrested, Papa Roger went dark. So it was probably Bryan Kohberger. There was also a story that I read from, I think, Jennifer, somebody, a former retired FBI agent, who indicated that she was also looking into the idea that that could be Bryan Kohberger, including a Redditor who was posting under this name Inside Looking, who had a very similar writing style to Bryan Kohberger, by which there was a survey that Bryan Kohberger had put out where he would lead people with a statement and then say, thoughts? Like he'd put out this, like, such and such happened, your thoughts? And so this happened on the Inside Looking when Kohberger said, November 13th, I think that was the date of the murders, November 13th was picked for a reason. Thoughts? And this led some to believe that this person again knew why November 13th was picked. So I did some research, and I was finding that there is a connection between BTK, the bind, torture, kill murderer, and the November 13th. It was one of his earliest kills where he broke into a house, much like Bryan Kohberger did, and strangled a woman in her home. Now, these women were and men were stabbed to death, not strangled. So the motive is different. But it was a break-in and a murder in a place. And so in that relations, it kind of related. The final piece that made me pay attention to the BTK thing, and then I'll let character analysis come on and give thoughts on it, was this. There was a moment in the arraignment that I found interesting. I was watching or listening to a podcast. The podcaster thought it was weird. The podcaster had a legal expert and I think some other type of expert come on the podcast. They were also confused about something that happened and didn't understand. And it leads to a connection to BTK. And that is, during the arraignment, Bryan Kohberger was responsive to all the questions asked. Is your name such and such? Yes. Do you live at this address? Yes. Are you aware of the charges against you? Yes. Count one is this. Are you aware of that? Yes. You understand the penalty? Yes. All the time, Bryan Kohberger engaged with the court and answered all the questions. At the time that the judge said, "And how do you plea?" his judge said, "We will stand silent." And it confused the podcaster. It confused a legal expert he had on the show. It confused another expert they had. They didn't understand why the statement "will stand silent." For example, if a defendant just simply refuses to answer the question or is catatonic or not responding, the court will often enter a plea of not guilty on their behalf. But making the statement "we will stand silent" was interesting. And it made the podcaster and another legal analyst say, I don't understand what that meant. Turns out it's exactly what Dennis Rader did when he was arraigned. The same exact thing happened. Dennis Rader interacted with the court and answered all the questions. Yes, yes, yes. I know what I did. I know what I'm accused of. I didn't know what he did. I know what I'm accused of. Blah, blah, blah. Yes, yes, yes. So how do you plead? And they said, "We will stand silent." So now I'm like, what's going on here? Because it was an oddity enough that people were saying, why did he do the "I will stand silent" thing? And yet that's the same thing Dennis Rader did, the BTK Killer. And then oddly enough, and again, we'll go to character and have some back and forth on this. Oddly enough, when the death penalty was put on the table, I don't know how soon after, but for Dennis Rader, when it became clear that they were going to go after the death penalty, he used basically the bargaining chip of, "I will tell you everything in graphic detail of what I did in exchange for taking death penalty off the table." So it leads me to question if Bryan Kohberger is the killer, which I kind of believe that he is, and if Bryan Kohberger is following in the footsteps of BTK with acting like he did during the arraignment and doing a murder, if that's the case, because we don't know that Inside Looking is Bryan Kohberger, to indicate that the date was picked for a reason. If that's the case, then will he also use okay, I'll tell you exactly what happened in graphic detail in exchange for taking it off the table? So anyways, what do you think, character? What do you know about those kind of situations? Oh, and then last thing, I won't get heavy into it. There also was a young man, Elliot Rogers, who was a 20-something-year-old student who did some murders back in 2014, 16, I think it was, that they think also is related to this. But we can talk about that peripherally after you give us some thoughts.
Well, Kohberger studied under Kathleen Ramsland, right? We know that. And she wrote a book about BTK. So I could definitely see him emulating, taking that, right? And saying that. Now, did you say, was it the judge that offered you could either say this or this, or did he say it on his own?
No, what happened was the judge asked, how do you plea? And then his attorney, he stayed silent. Kohberger stayed silent. He said, how do you plea? And the lawyer representing him, which was Ann Taylor, right?
Yes.
She said, Your Honor, we will stand silent, which was the wording that Dennis Rader's attorney used as well. We will stand silent.
He probably told her that's what he was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see where you're going, and I agree with you. I do think that he has cherry-picked certain things. If you go, there's a course online that Ramsland put together, and it's of serial killers.
Yeah.
And one of them is BTK, one is Bundy, one is Elliot Rodger.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yep.
See, this is what's amazing because I figured you'd know, like I didn't know because I haven't gotten that far in my research again. I knew that his professor was a well-known, criminal justice professional, had written books. I did not know that she had written a book about BTK or had spoken about Elliot Rodger. So that's freaking even more fascinating to me. And
Go ahead.
Oh, along that lines, Elliot Rodgers, by the way, what I remember about Elliot Rodgers, and the reason where there's a connection there is Elliot Rodgers was a young man who apparently had a misogynistic type view towards women, had publicly announced that women shunned him, that he was socially rejected by women. He'd gone on social media to talk about what he was going to do, and he had a vendetta against women. Same kind of things happening in Kohberger's case, in which he's being depicted as being misogynistic. He had apparently had run-ins with his professors multiple times about harshly grading female papers over male students, and had been reprimanded it multiple times, and in fact was let go by the university from his teaching position for being misogynistic, essentially. So he's following in that kind of footsteps as well.
Well, like I mentioned to you earlier, the other connection is the sorority that Elliot Rodger attacked, the women from the sorority. It's the same sorority that two of the victims, or two of the women who lived in the house, belonged to. So there's that connection.
Yeah.
Now,
right.
whether
different campus, the same sorority, right?
Different campus, same sorority.
Right.
So there is that. Like I said, I mean, I've always believed that this case, that the suspect was trying to emulate or he's trying to beat Bundy.
Yeah.
Right? Like he went in Bundy and Chi Omega. Omega. If you. Yeah. Go ahead.
No. I'm saying, like, he's on the weak side of Bundy, because Bundy got a lot more people than he did.
He sure did, but you really have to wonder. Now listen, BTK, of course, first crime had 4 victims, just like Kohberger.
Yeah.
And so you do wonder, did this guy just get incredibly, quote unquote, lucky with this, or did he escalate from something else?
Yeah. It's because with the BTK thing again, I don't know why I stumble so much on that. If the first one was 4 murders, and then Bryan pulls off 4 murders, even though the date doesn't match up, because again, the November 13th date was in line of the second murder, I guess, of BTK, but it could be, one could argue, maybe he intended to follow in the same footsteps and do 4 and all these things, but missed the first date, and so he had to go to the second date that BTK did it, and did it on the anniversary of the second date, because he missed his, I don't know when the first one was done, but it leads to an interesting question. In my mind, I'm like, well, when was the first one done? And was he planning something on that first date and missed the date because he wasn't ready or whatever and moved on to the second date? I don't know.
I think that he chose that date specifically because it was the weekend before Thanksgiving break, and there would be a ton of parties, and they would be very, very drunk.
Yeah,
I think that was intentional.
and I think I don't want to dismiss it. I'm just saying that in my mind, I have to look at that BTK thing because of the way that they both acted during their arraignment and the fact that it was noted as being such odd thing to do, that the legal expert didn't understand what the purpose was of saying I'm going to stand silent is, and then it harkens back to BTK. It makes me think, and now even more so when you add in that his professor had written a book on BTK. Now I'm like, well, shit, I bet you dollars to donuts Kohberger read that book, by his professor. I'm sure he did. And so if he read that, I mean, I can't prove that, but if he read the book, then again, he would be intimately familiar with the case. And I find it super interesting.
Yeah, and I'm sure he took the course where she covers all of the most well-known, or she covered, I think it was 12 serial unalivers, and she covered them for different reasons. Like, I believe Elliot Rodger was covered because he was a Schmincel, before we really knew what Schmincels were. And Bundy, for his own reason, BTK. So I could definitely see him cherry picking little things from each one.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's just I find that super interesting. What does it mean at the end of the day? It doesn't mean much other than supporting evidence that Kohberger actually did it, and he has some kind of grandiose beliefs or whatever. It just leads to an interest. It certainly makes the case interesting. That's for sure. I don't know that it's here nor there, but I always find those little Easter eggs to be fascinating from just an outside.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You brought up the survey. Yeah. And now this survey, it comes from a script. He didn't write this survey himself, but the script, when the questions are asked, they're framed, or they're written where they're asking the person, the respondent, what were you thinking when you arrived at your target location? What were you thinking as you approached your target? Yeah. But in Kohberger's version, he asks not just what were you thinking, but what were you feeling?
Yeah.
And I think of Luigi, and I think of if he was involved, right? It seems like everything fell apart afterwards. And I wonder, is it that he wasn't prepared for the emotional toll that was going to take?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Getting on to Luigi is a good idea, but I want to back up a second on Kohberger, because it does seem that one thing that seems kind of consistent, and I haven't verified. So a lot of rumors get said about somebody almost to character assassinate people. That's common. But one of the things that was said about Kohberger is that he had a history of stating that he didn't feel things like normal people, that he felt emotionless, that he and so there's this belief and an understandable narrative that the only time he could feel something was to do something so horrendous that it made him feel something finally. So it's like, I don't understand why everybody feels joy, everybody feels sadness, and I want to feel something. I want to feel anything. So maybe if I go to an extreme about murdering people, I'll feel something. And further, it leads to the survey question. How do you feel? How should I be feeling? Like when I'm planning this murder, what would you be feeling? How should I? Because maybe he didn't understand emotions and he didn't understand how people feel, and so he wanted to kind of connect and be like, what should a normal person feel when trying to do these things? Because I don't have a feeling about it,
Well, psychopaths often mask, right? That's how they pass. Right, Ted Bundy he volunteered at the Women's Crisis Center, probably to learn empathy, how to mask empathy, right? How, as well as how to, get access to vulnerable women.
Yeah.
And I think Kohberger too wanted to mask. He was like, how do I act? How do I do this? How do I present? Right? Because I don't think he knew how to. I don't think he felt much, to be honest. I really don't.
He looks to me like he has a flat affect, like he just doesn't really show a lot of emotion. So I can see that in him. By the way, I want to comment this commenter before it goes off my screen too far about this early audio that was released early on the and that was debunked. I don't remember that audio. I do remember a very interesting audio about a security professional that had information about security video footage from parking lots and stuff like that. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but I'm getting back into the case. So if you have information to refresh my memory, if you can't do it here in short form, please send me a message or something like that so I can start digging into that audio. Unless, of course, character knows exactly what you're talking about.
I do know what she's talking about. And it was a woman who posted, she was showing people how much her security device, the sound, how much it could pick up.
Okay.
It was not a real scenario. It wasn't a real scenario at all. It was staged to demonstrate the sound that could be picked up. And she came out and she said, this is not from, she's not even from Moscow. She said, this is not from the night of the crime. This is from my house. And, people just, they just ran with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was fake. What I do want to go back to for a second is Papa Rogers, if we can.
Sure.
So I happen to think that Papa Rogers was law enforcement.
Yeah.
You cannot tell me that picture that it was just a coincidence. Like you can't tell. This is where I go down the rabbit hole. This is where I put on my tinfoil hat. There's no way listen, not no way. Of course there's a way. But the eeriness and the similarity, it just makes me think that, see, what I think they were doing is they knew he was going to be online. Like they knew he was going to be looking at all this stuff, reading all this stuff. And I wonder if law enforcement was trying to sort of get a rise out of him.
Yeah.
Right? Trigger him a little bit.
I would certainly entertain that possibility. I mean, I think that's what the community thought too. It's either Kohberger or a law enforcement insider. And I think both of those are legitimate possibilities. Even inside looking, the same thing.
And with the 4chan posts, see, I think that was Kohberger. Yes. And I think that for a couple of reasons. Did you look it up? Did you read that?
I did after you mentioned it. It's funny because when you typed it to me, it came off as 4chain letters, and I'm like, what? And then I was like, you must be saying 4chan. And I finally found the 4chan. Unfortunately, all I found was an hour and 45-minute discussion about it, and I didn't want to listen to all hour and 45 minutes because I started to, and it was all fluff. And I'm like, I just want to see what was posted. I don't want to have the analysis yet. I just want to see I couldn't find it. So.
Oh shoot! I should. Do you want me to Google it and
yeah,
bring it
sure.
up?
Because I was not Googling competently apparently that day. So because all I came across was the video, and I was like, well, that's great and dandy, and they had screenshots, so I did stop and freeze it, but it wasn't enough. I want to see the original post if it still exists. Or
all right, I'm gonna go over to Google. I'm probably gonna get booted, and then I'll come right back in.
All right,
because I know how to find it. Hold on.
Thanks, appreciate that. So anyways, let's see what else. 4chan trying to blame the frat brothers, right? So we'll find out. She's going to go get that, and we'll let her come back and talk about that. Insider law enforcement vibes, probably yes. I think the insider law enforcement is very, very likely. The interesting, of course, the reason why it was speculated to be Kohberger himself in relation to Papa Rogers was because of it ending right right before Kohberger was arrested, indicating that once Kohberger was arrested, there was no more posts that could come. And then a copycat started happening after that. It does lead to the interesting side comment while we're waiting for character analysis to come back about how many times when we're investigating true crime are we inadvertently interacting with the killers themselves or suspects themselves who are snooping on their own. What do people know? What have people figured out? It's almost like a fan base kind of thing. Like if you were a killer, you probably get an ego rush from seeing how close people are getting or how close they're not getting. If, for example, and I hate to do this without character being here, but if Luigi was laying Easter eggs down like the Monopoly money and the 286 Pokemon thing, how would that person who did that bond of like, I wonder how long it's going to take the audience to figure this out? How long does it take the average citizen to figure this out? How smart are people and can they see what I've done? Oh, cool, they see what I'm doing. That's awesome. I feel great. Like there would be an ego rush to some extent, perhaps, to see if people can figure out all the little Easter eggs you left and things that you left for your quote unquote fans or whatever, in a sick way, like your fans. But I could imagine there being a kick out of that. And so a lot of times when you're investigating true crimes, you have to wonder if you're interacting with people who are intimately involved, including law enforcement who are trying to find out who, like when we talk, when I talk about true crime, right? How many times have I picked up law enforcement going, what does this guy know? Like, waiting for me to say something that sounds like I know something I shouldn't know, to go, maybe we should look into that guy. So when you investigate true crime, if you start getting on the right track, how many times are you drawing negative attention to yourself and you're getting investigated and all of a sudden somebody shows up in your life? This has happened to me. Somebody shows up in your life and they start asking really interesting questions and wanting to be your buddy and wanting to find out what you know. And you're like, why is this person doing it? How many times has that been law enforcement? And you're like, what the hell do you know? Are you just a Joe Blow who's good at making guesses, or are you actually onto something? And then when they rule you out, they move on and disappear from your life just as fast as they came. And it's an interesting phenomenon that I feel like I've seen happen as well. Do you think Luigi was framed? The evidence timeline is so off. So I think, and by the way, it looks like the character's back. So let me hold off on the is Luigi framed part for just cover a little bit more of Kohberger, and then we'll come back to Luigi. So you're back now.
I am. I want to see if I have the right thing. Hold on. Okay, yeah, right here. All right, so these are graphic, just so you know. And this is 4chan. This was published December 12th, 2022, just about a month after the unalivings. And what I thought was really interesting about this, now, first of all, this was somebody trying very, very hard to sound British. Like it was too much. It was over the top. But what really stuck out to me was he mentioned, let's see, if you look down here, talked about leaving their cell phones behind on YouTube, autoplay, no pings. And then up above, and I don't know if I think it's right up top. DNA not in CODIS. Pings, DNA, CODIS.
Interesting.
Right? Like what college kid knows about CODIS?
Well,
right?
I mean, so Kohberger's PhD level candidate, right? I'm sure he's probably, and he was he wanted to work with law enforcement as well, but yeah, it's great observation. I mean, again, law enforcement insider or somebody who is intimately familiar with law enforcement practices.
Kelly, my boo, she says anybody who watched Law and Order SVU would know that, and that's true. That's true. But would they know the pings, Kelly?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Is there a way for you to send me that link or something so I can go read this when I'm off of the live?
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that very much. Yeah, so I'm fascinated to read that and to delve into it. Again, as a critical thinker kind of thing, I think you and I have a lot of similarities. We look for things and then we start to ask those questions not everybody asks, and then we start going down rabbit holes, and then of course it's easy to get vested in your own guesses where it's going. But that's what we do. Like, I think it's human nature. You know, you're like, I think I'm onto something, and I'm going to follow this till it dies. And then if it turns out you're wrong, then you move on to the next best guess. But
Kelly, we listen and we don't judge, but we're really judging. Absolutely, Kelly, for sure. Um, just sounds like Kohberger was saying info he knew while using language he has learned in his major. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what it sounded like to me. You
yeah,
know, because if this is somebody who, but I will say they had so much knowledge of this fraternity and these two kids, or at the very least, at least he knew the names, right?
yeah.
Just this in this day and age, for somebody to put someone's full name out there in association with such a grisly crime, that's you're pretty fucked up to do something like that.
There's a I hesitate to say this. I can't remember if I said this before with you on the thing, and maybe I even said I hesitate to say it last time I said it. There was early on years ago. So this is years ago, and I have not refreshed my memory. This is why I'm saying I'm hesitant to bring it up. There was an indication. Thank you, by the way, for gifts and all that good stuff. I appreciate that. There was an indication early on that one of the survivors was it. There was initials used in the initial complaint instead of their names, but one of the survivors supposedly had a beef and like a hatred towards one of the victims. And there was an indication that they had had fights, and that the survivor knew Kohberger, and potentially had conspired with Kohberger to let Kohberger into the house and commit the murders, which would explain perhaps why it wasn't reported till long after, many hours after, why they didn't call immediately, even though saw the killer face to face, kind of thing. Did you ever stumble upon that idea that he knew one of the girls, and one of the girls had a beef with one of the victims?
Oh God, yeah, that has remained to today. I mean, people still say it, and the reason why I don't think that's the case is because of the dog. Now, if she was in on it, right? Don't you think she would have warned him a dog was going to be there?
Yeah.
Because it was the dog that kind of, I think, startled him.
The dog. Yeah. So what's interesting to me is you are confirming that I remember that a little bit, right? That there was some kind of allegation about one of the survivor having a beef with one of the girls, and therefore there was a suggestion, right, that maybe
Hmm.
there was an insider that allowed him in. The dog is hard for me because we don't know so much about the dog. Like, I don't know that we know. Maybe you do. We don't. I don't know if we know if the dog was crated. I don't know if we know if the dog was behind a closed door. We don't like. I don't know a lot about the dog. It's just this. It's all these theories and speculations about, well, the dog would have done this and the dog would have done that, and I'm like, I'm not sure where the dog was. Was the dog in a crate? Was the dog loose? Was the dog,
From from what I understand, her father said that the dog was not crated, but the thing about the father is he said a lot of stuff and very little of it is accurate. It's very much like a game of telephone. He talks to a lot of people, and he unfortunately has been trolled quite a few times. So it's unclear if there was a crate in the room. We know he was in the room because the not just the PCA, but even Ann Taylor said when she presented in a hearing a couple weeks ago that the dog was in Kaylee's room. That is confirmed. Hi, Ms. Ozark. And I don't think the dog was crated. We did see a picture of Kaylee's bedroom that was taken the night after the murder from like outside. And you can see that the bed covers are turned down, like she had gotten out of bed.
Yeah.
I think she was, sleeping with her dog in her bedroom. She was moving, so I could see her wanting to spend as much time with the dog as possible. And I think it was the dog that heard something, like heard noise, and she got up and she opened the door. I think her room was like right at the top of the stairs and Dylan's was right at the bottom. I think she said, "Someone's here." I think she walked into that room, and I think he just blitz attacked her.
There was an interesting thing about the "someone's here" comment, which was that, and I'm trying to remember where I saw it, that someone in law enforcement had confirmed that someone was on their cell phone on TikTok or something like that, some social media, maybe it wasn't TikTok, and that they indicated that the statement "someone's here" could have been something that was picked up from the phone and not actually a statement from somebody in the house. Was that Xanax?
They said that because of the activity on Xana's phone, Dylan thought she heard Kaylee, who was upstairs. But the PCA said it could be Dylan, or it could be, I mean, it could have been Kaylee, or it could have been Xana.
Yeah.
Because the activity on TikTok, I mean, she literally, her last comment on TikTok was, I believe, 4:14.
Wow.
Or 4:12. Like, I mean, literally. Go ahead.
Yeah, what stuns me is the timeline. If I understand the timeline correctly, we're looking at 15 minutes to kill 4 people on 2 floors and get out. And I'm not saying that's not possible. I don't know. I never timed myself killing 4 people. But the point being is it seems like that's awfully fast, and to not leave the place a complete mess. I mean, and DNA everywhere. And again, I think it's 14 minutes. I think 4:04-ish to 4:20, they see the car speeding off. You're looking at 15, 16 minutes. I'm not saying it's not possible, because again, I tend to believe that it was Kohberger, but it just makes me, again, it leads to the question. I'm still having that question about, did somebody in the house let him in? Was there some assistance in this in some regards, or whether he just got lucky to get in and out that quick? But I don't know.
It was even less than 15 minutes. It was something like 10 to 12 minutes.
Wow. I haven't narrowed it down
right?
that good. I got to 15 at least, but yeah.
I mean, insane.
That is.
Insane.
Because you have to, I mean, okay, if somebody's, I mean, I don't want to get super morbid, but if somebody's sleeping, you can understand that not being a fight back situation. But there were multiple people awake in the house, including at least one, maybe 2 of the victims were awake in the house. So I don't understand how there wasn't a struggle, a fight, and how that all of that happens in that short a period of time.
I think he planned the attack very intentionally for 4 a.m. so that they would be passed out. You know, He knew it was a Saturday night, the weekend before Thanksgiving. I think, I just think, and that weapon, I mean, that weapon, that's not a weapon you bring in just to intimidate.
Yeah.
Right? That's a weapon you bring in to do serious damage, effectively, quietly, quickly.
Yeah.
So
somebody mentioned about having a kit nearby for changing clothes. I'm sure all of that happened. In fact, wasn't it the 4chan? And maybe it wasn't, because I didn't read the 4chan. But was there indications in the 4chan that a group of people were talking about pulling this off, and how they were talking about staging, kill kits and change clothes and stuff like that to work together, kind of thing? Another one of these kind of like, I can't remember the details where I saw that, but there was indications that. The
4chan post implicated 2 guys. I'm not going to say their names because those kids have been drugged through the mud for 2.5 years, all because of this 4chan post. And they said that they had a lookout, so they said it was like 3 or 4 people. But again, I'm always hesitant whenever I hear someone like an insider write anything about any case. And all of the things, all the little data points that they mention are things that we've seen pictures of, or things that we've already seen covered on the news. I'm always hesitant about that. And at that point, we had seen the video of the 4 people running in the background while it was on the police body cam while he was talking to the 3 kids on the band field. Yep. In the background, you see, to me, it doesn't look like running. It just looks like 4 kids walking, not strange at all, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But they did sort of incorporate that into the 4chan post. I don't think it was multiple people, only because I don't think you could keep that a secret. I think it'd be really difficult. And also, people need to remember, they tried to implicate these 2 fraternity brothers of Ethan's, and what they forgot was that Ethan's Ethan's triplet brother lived at the same fraternity house. So that's tricky.
Yeah.
That they were gonna that these two guys not unalived this guy Ethan and then lived with his brother. You know, that's why I feel like,
Well,
no, I
here's the
don't think
thing. This is why I'm excited about the case still, because there's a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot of theories that are still out there. You know, some people asked here in the chat about motive. From day one, 2 years ago, whatever, when this happened, my best guess of motive, my early guess was PhD Crim J student who's got an ego, who's basically going to prove he can get away with murder because he knows so much about how forensics works. He knows so much about how law enforcement does. He's going to do a murder and he's going to get away with it, kind of thing. And the motive would be further amplified by this idea that maybe he doesn't feel anything. He's got no emotion. He's a flat kind of person, and he wants to know, how to feel something. So those would lead to potential motive. An ego-driven thing. Am I smarter than you? Can I get away with this? Can I taunt law enforcement? Can I? It's an ego-driven thing, or a broken individual who doesn't feel anything and wants to feel something. So I would say those were my two best guesses on motive as far as my guess, but
I think the motive was to beat Bundy, but I also think he hated women, and I think he wanted to unalive women. And I love Casey Lytle, love Casey Lytle when he talks about these cases. But the thing that was interesting for me was the very early on. I think my first video about this case about Idaho, I said that because people were saying, oh, they don't have a suspect, and basically talk about what buffoons they were. And my thought was, that's intentional.
Yeah.
They want him to relax because then he'll screw up, because they're playing to his ego.
Right.
They probably have a go ahead.
No, this is something we talked about in the Luigi case as well. Law enforcement will frequently mislead the public through media leaks, especially if they think that they have another conspirator who's on the loose, to make the conspirator think that they've gotten away with it, so that they let their guard down.
Right. And from what I understand, it's if they think there's a co-conspirator, they don't arrest just one of them. They watch him. They keep an eye on the one, right, to see if they'll lead to the co-conspirator, or if they do take him in, they take them in, they question him, but then they keep an eye on him, hoping that he will lead them to, is there anybody else? And that's the other thing too. I'm sure that they were looking at his phone, watching him at night. I'm sure they were looking to see if there was anybody else involved.
Yeah. And I'll be brief on this because nobody gives a shit about this anymore. But 12 years ago, I got into investigating the Aurora, Colorado mass shooting in the Batman. And the same thing there. There was early on indications of conspirators, and the law enforcement had done things to basically spy on the potential conspirators and ruled it out. But they were certainly looking into it. The public was never told that. The public was told from day one, lone gunmen, and we have no reason to believe there's anybody else involved. But then there was later evidence showing that law enforcement suspected there was possible roommates involved, other people involved, and they were watching those houses and casing those houses, and then later ruled it out, even though they told the public, we have no reason to believe there's anybody else involved. So this is common MO with things. They do trying to rule out those the options that there were other people involved. Now the question becomes from a person who doesn't trust law enforcement. I think law enforcement is great, by the way. I don't mean to shit on law enforcement. I think law enforcement is amazing, but they are people like you and me, and they also have a desire to make a conviction, and things get muddied when they start making sure that they want to get the right guy. So I've seen too many times where once they've decided who they're going to pin it on, who's going down for it, they begin to stop talking about any other options, and it all becomes narrow focused, and it's not justice anymore. When you're not like trying to get the truth, you're just trying to prove that this is the guy that we want for it. So there's that. But one thing I want to say, two things I want to say. One, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I like to keep these around an hour for myself, so I want to kind of wrap up. But I do want to give a chance for Luigi to talk a little bit, even though we're at the 1 hour mark. But I want to say thank you again for coming on and talking Kohberger, because I really wanted to talk Kohberger. It's what I've been listening to podcasts and trying to get caught back up on that case. So I really thank you for coming on and spending some time with me on Kohberger. If there are any quick questions on Luigi, and let's make them relatively quick, like less than 5 minutes, I'll try to answer those or give some opinions, and then let's wrap up for the night, if that's okay. And thanks for coming in. If you're saying good night, thank you very much for coming in. So I just real quick frame. Oh, was Luigi framed? So I here's the thing. My gut tells me Luigi was involved in it. And so I don't believe that he was quote unquote framed. I do see a scenario in which he was a part of conspirators, a group of people. I see that scenario myself, that he was a part of a group of conspirators. Whether or not it was planned by the conspirators, if that turns out to be true, that Luigi was going to take a fall, or whether the conspirators turned on him and made him take the fall when he didn't realize he was going to be the one taking the fall for it, I don't know. So in my mind, I'm still researching the conspirator angle, the multiple conspirator angle, and whether or not Luigi purposely took the fall, like the How to Blow Up a Pipeline movie, which was exactly the plot of How to Blow Up a Pipeline. People agreed together to commit a crime and agreed that one person was going to take the fall, and that person agreed to it. They were going to take the fall for everybody else, so everybody else got away. So I see a scenario in which that's possible. I see a scenario in which there was conspirators, and then Luigi ended up unintentionally or whatever, taking the fall when he didn't realize he was taking a fall. And I also see the possibility that Luigi actually is the guy. So all of those things are things that I feel, to be intellectually honest, we have to all weigh all those options. So that's where I'm at. Thanks for the question.
I'm just looking through.
Bryan Thompson's wife, we've talked about this before. In a murder case, the first person you look at is the spouse. So we know that Bryan Thompson was estranged from his wife. They had two separate houses about a mile apart from each other. They weren't living together. She made an odd comment to the law enforcement when they asked her, "Does anybody have a beef with your husband?" Well, I think so, maybe. So he had some threats against him, and I think it was about denial of claims. Was that all a cover? Did she hire somebody to take out her husband? Possibility. I can't imagine, as I'm sure I think character agrees, that law enforcement didn't run that down early. That should have been one of the first things. It's like rule number one in murder cases: always suspect the spouse first. So I don't know how that was ruled out. We've never heard about that. We've never heard that she was ever a suspect, but she, in my opinion, she had to have been a suspect, at least until they ruled her out, and maybe it was ruled out very quickly. I don't know.
Why do we not hear about BT himself? Literally no digging into his
insider trading money? Or yeah, we did hear a lot about that. Did you want to comment on that instead of me, or?
No, you can go for that one.
Yeah, sure. So there is a lot of yes, mainstream media is not covering it for sure. But we've dug into it a lot in our channel, in our timeline, about how Bryan Thompson was being pulled into the Department of Justice under investigation for the purchase of Change Health, which the Department of Justice told them not to do, and they did it anyways. Well, they were told by government regulators not to do so. And then the Department of Justice was investigating that, and the fact that Andrew Whitty, Bryan Thompson, shorted a bunch of their stock, sold a bunch of their stock before it became publicly announced that they were under investigation by the Department of Justice. And they basically allowed themselves to get away with not taking a major hit like everybody else took when the announcement was made. So where I'm going with all that is, yes, mainstream media doesn't seem to want to cover that very much. However, all that documentation is out there. It's easy to find. It's easy to verify. It's 100% true. If you care, I'll plug my own website. devilsadvocates.info has a timeline, the Luigi timeline, and all the dates, including the lawsuit by the Hollywood firefighters pension that was filing a lawsuit about the fact that Bryan Thompson and Andrew Whitty cashed out money and made a crap ton of money before basically the stock died, and they lost a crap ton of money. All that's documented, so it's known about. But yes, mainstream media doesn't talk about it a lot. Thanks for those questions. And definitely the inside hit idea is certainly, when you're talking about the amount of money that's involved, in the Department of Justice investigation. I have theorized, and I've said before, it's going to change the narrative for everybody if it turns out that the health insurance industry itself hired a hitman to take out Bryan Thompson because they were afraid of him spilling the beans on all their corrupt practices. All of a sudden, the guy that everybody views as the bad guy, because people are like, I don't have any sympathy for Bryan Thompson, F that guy, right? All of a sudden, he'd be like, well, what if he was going to come out and rat on the whole scheme? What if that's why he died and he was silenced by other people who are a-holes trying to make sure that he shuts his mouth? That would change everybody's narrative. So, in my personal thing, I hope that the narrative is a little bit more what we think it is, and not something like that. But I always say follow the money, so I don't know. All right, so I want to say thank you to everybody. I want to wrap up here. Character analysis, thank you again. It was a real pleasure having you on talking about Bryan Kohberger as well. I really appreciate your insights and thoughts. I'm glad that you sparked my memory on some things that I had forgotten, and so I get to. And if you sent me those 4chan things, that would be amazing.
Okay, definitely, and thank you for having me. I always love your lives.
Thank you so much.
Good spirited discussion.
I never seem to get into yours. Like, I saw one time where it says your live ended, and I'm like, shit, I missed your live. So I don't seem to be on the same wavelength with your timeline, but, you know.
I was doing it with Lady Capulet, she's on the West Coast.
Yeah, I am as well.
So that's why we went so late. Are you on the West Coast? Oh, okay, well, next time.
Yeah, no problem. No worries. I don't want to pressure you. I'm just letting you know that I would jump in or at least listen to your lives if I catch you, but I haven't been able to catch you, so.
Oh, I'll give you a heads up next time.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you guys coming in and supporting the channel and the likes and the gifts that have been done tonight. I think we've got a record viewer count for me, which is great for me. So I appreciate that in our channel. And Character Analysis has a whopping 101 watching her, so good job for you. And thank you so much, everyone. I will be posting. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that what does that number mean?
That's the number of concurrent viewers watching right now, I believe.
No, that's the number in the upper right-hand corner. That 141 is gifts.
Oh. Yeah, so I see my my upper right has got my count, but yours is in the lower left, and I thought that was your count too. So is that something else? Oh, then you're getting gifts up there, yin yang.
Woo! I got 4 cents. Woo!
I know that.
Don't spend it all in one place, ladies.
Yeah, retirement comes early. Last thing I will say before I hang up the phone, literally, like this is on a phone, is that this live, as all my lives, will be posted to our YouTube channel within a couple hours. It takes probably about 45 minutes for the thing to process on TikTok side. I get it downloaded back up to TikTok to YouTube. So if you missed part of this, if you want to catch the whole thing, or if you want to go back and watch any of the other discussions that we've had, you can watch all of our recorded lives on YouTube. Thank you very much. Check out our website.
Wait a minute. One thing. Lady Capulet, if you want to go live after this, let me know. And we can go live on my page.
And it'll be a little hard for me because I've already lost my voice. I need to always decompress after I do a live. So.
Okay, boo. Okay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye. Lady Capulet, I'll message.